Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer, Time Traveling with Tommy Tallarico. I had to practice that, guys, with my accent. When I say a lot of T's, sometimes I have trouble with that. I gotta have some coffee in the morning, man. It's been a really tough week at work. But let me tell you, one of the things I've been doing is I've been watching old G4 TV programs. I've been watching uh, Electric Playground, and let me just say, guys, I am no fan of Victor Lucas. You know, as his modern version, right? I used to like the old Victor Lucas that was non-political before you got TDR. Um, and we forget that Tommy Tallarico was an entertainer back then. That's why he has so many fans. And that show worked. You had the Victor Lucas, which is the more straight guy, and Tommy Tallarico, which is the comedic influence, if you will, on the show. But what people forget about the show is so many great interviews, so many people that they had on from the video game industry. And if you look at it from this perspective, and this is what I was looking at while I'm going through the old G4 TV shows, where I'm going through, Electric Playground, is how they would interview people in the industry. And nobody was asking them about their political beliefs. Nobody was asking about their religion, their private lives. It was just about the games, and they were so engaged about the games. Another thing you'll notice, there's no rainbow hair colors. There's no no multiple piercings in the face. All these people wanted to work in the video game industry. They didn't come from other degrees. That having English majors. They weren't teachers before. They were just into video games. It doesn't matter who they were interviewing. They were there for the love of the games. And one of the contrasts you will see, that's a mostly male interviewing interviewees, I would say in English, are mostly male, because that's what dominated the video game industry back then. And because they were making, games for the audience that they served, which are mostly men, it just had a different feel to it. You know what I'm saying? These guys would go into the offices, you would go in there, and you could just see guys working. They're just sitting there grinding. And all of a sudden they got to talk about their work, and they're excited. Oh, I'm going to make this game. I'm making this game. It has this and this. You have your usual hacks in there. The Sony representatives, the Xbox representatives, whatever. But man, what a great time it was. What a great time, we can still enjoy, through these old shows. For me, guys, I enjoy watching these type of shows because they're safe around the family, right? If I have my little girl around, I know Tommy might say some innuendo stuff, but nothing that is not for a child's ears. At this point, when she's 3, she's repeating everything, so you have to be really careful around her. And that's why I tend to watch, old sitcoms. I don't watch many modern TV. I don't stream a lot, unless it's with my wife that she really wants to watch something. I don't. I mostly watch 70s and 80s shows. The probably the darker I'll get, like when she's asleep, I'll watch like Kolchak, Kolchak, the Night Stalker. It's one of my favorite shows. I don't know why they don't make that into the video game. Those of you who are Gen Xers will know exactly what show I'm talking about, right? That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut. But that's what I tend to watch. But as I'm watching these episodes, man, not only am I getting nostalgic for the old products, I'm thinking like, man, how much it has changed, not for the better. And and my parents, my grandparents used to say, "Oh, it was better in the old days," and you guys have lost some of the stuff, and it was true to some extent, because now when I look back at it, when in the 80s, that's when they started to regulate stuff, like, oh, you can't drink certain places, you can't smoke certain places, you can't. They started putting tighter controls on society, if you will. And for us, we still had, it was pretty loose before the 2000s, and then something happened in the mid 2000s. Man, people just lost their mind, and along with people, the video game industry reflected of what a lot of the changes in society that have not been for the betterment of the gaming industry, I would say. Um, and looking back at these old shows and looking at the creators of these games and looking at their points of view, what they were focusing on, there is not one that you will hear talking about, social crap, or, how my video game is going to affect the mental status of, X, Y, or Z population. No, they're just, I'm here, this is going to be a fun platformer. We're adding this. It was all about technology. How can they improve things? And there were so many new things that were coming out that was the excitement of it. And there were so many companies to cover, right? Whether it's on G4 or an Electric Playground, that it just, and for me, it was exciting. But for me, it's really led me to like, oh my gosh, let me look at this game that I haven't looked at, right? When I see the creators talking about it and talk about certain things that they've added to the game that I, probably didn't even think about, right? Some games that I don't own at the moment. And it was just, I've been having a great time, believe it or not. I've been having a great time watching these old shows, these old TV shows from, they start like around 1997 on forward. And what a great time, now we're talking about, what, 30 years? Jesus Christ. 30 plus years. And it's still great. The content is still holds up for if you're a retro gamer, guys. And it's a lot better than what we have now, let me tell you. And, to the detriment of, of what we do here on YouTube, I have to say there's something to be said for these shows that had production value, right? Right now, everything's about the podcast and what does a regular Joe think and this and that and the other. But there's something missing, right? That journalistic professionalism is missing. Things that you can't really get sometimes on YouTube, because really it is about one person talking to another, right? And that's sorely missed in some areas, let me tell you, because you have to be a professional sometimes to be objective, what have you. And I'm not saying that these shows were the pinnacle of journalism back then, but at least there was a little bit of sense, right? Like, I'm going to talk to this creator. I'm not going to get into their personal life. I'm here to talk about the game. Tell me about the game. Tell me about the technology you're using. Tell me why your game is special. What inspired you to make this game? I mean, the questions you would ask as a gamer, the questions you would ask as a normal person, not the questions that the average YouTuber is asking right now in pursuit of clicks. And that's a bias, right? That really is what makes this entertainment form not as good, right? Not as good for conveying certain things. Having public opinion, having an honest opinion, of course, has value, right? But there's also bias, where sometimes you don't present things, in a fair manner because you have a bias against this, that, and the other. So, and that's what's going on in the video game industry today. And by watching these old shows, not only am I going back and looking at old games that I haven't looked at or even considered, I'm finding new things that I could, buy and purchase. And it's crazy because you're looking at these old shows and they're having like the hidden treasures or the hidden gems or the golden oldies, whatever the hell. And this is 30 years ago. This is it puts it into context. 30 years ago, they were talking about games that were 10, 12 years old, right? They're already old. And if you're like me, man, you're also in the same boat, man. We've been around for a long time. But, we're of age. But what that experience does, at least for me, and I hope for you out there, is that it gives you better perspective. Better perspective on how to judge things fairly and rediscover maybe some old games that you haven't thought about in a long time and maybe are worth another try. Before you spend on another game full of microtransactions or a digital download that, it's really just a rental. Why not buy a game that somebody made with some effort for you to own long term? All right, guys. Yeah, go watch those shows, man. If you're into that stuff, I mean, it's hard to turn off, what you know about people now. But these shows, let me tell you, if you're a retro gamer, they still hold up. All right, humans, I will catch you on the next one. Don't forget to check out those interviews. That's the gold, right, in those shows. It's not so much the personalities, but the interviews. There's some great interviews in there, guys. All right, I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.